So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the World AI Show. And right now we're on our data and AI panel discussion on powering data with AI, the classic combination, with the subtopics AI infrastructure for big data analytics, benefits of leveraging AI with data, powering a self-managing data center with AI, and AI SaaS integration. Well, we're later to be joined by our eminent guests. First up, we've got Theng, Chong, the head of artificial intelligence and frontiers plus Malaysia, joining us. Well, Theng has an extensive experience and knowledge working with data and AI from the real world industry usage. At Plus Malaysia, he's well versed in strategic delivery through people, data, and technology, using various platforms to deliver the needs of business now and in the future. Thank you so much, Theng, for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for hosting me. Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Pleasure having you. Now, joining us on the screen is Dr. Kuljit Singh, President, Association of Private Hospitals, Malaysia. Dr. Kuljit leads the way on minimally invasive sinus surgery using imaging guidance system. Currently, he serves the position of the Medical Director at the PCMC Kuala Lumpur and is also the President of the APHM. His passion is to serve the healthcare of the people of Malaysia. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuljit, for joining us today.
Right. Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you for inviting me.
Likewise, great having you. Now joining us on the stage and screen is Alan Cheah, the Country General Manager, Carsome Certified. At Carsome Certified, Alan is poised to expand the retail network in Malaysia and create a seamless end-to-end user experience when it comes to purchasing cars. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me as well. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Joining us now on the screen is Dr. Hazlina Selamat, the Associate Professor, Universiti Teknologi Malaysia, UTM. Well, with a team of AI experts from academia and industry, she's somebody who works on establishing the Malaysia AI Consortium that brings together key AI players in Malaysia to support the nation's AI ecosystem through skill development programs and research collaborations. Thank you so much, Dr. Hazlina, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to introduce to you the moderator of this panel discussion, Balaji Rajamani, the Enterprise Architect, Data Management and Analytics Tetra Pak. Well, Balaji is a leading architect of enterprise data management spanning across data warehouses, data lakes, data engineering, and advanced analytics for effective decision-making. Thank you so much, Balaji, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. Looking forward to the discussion.
So ladies and gentlemen, with this, you have the eminent panelists on your stage and screen. If you may have any questions directed to our panel, please feel to type it up in the Q&A section. We'll take it up at the end of the session if time allows. Well, with this, Balaji, it's over to you to take it forth with your panel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Bhavna, and glad to meet this eminent panelist out here. So this is going to be a very interesting topic, and very relevant one, data and artificial intelligence and powering data with AI, because these two go hand in hand. It's a very good combination. While many companies are already in the journey of embarking their AI progress and achieving something new with this new artificial intelligence capabilities. For this group today, why don't we start with a very more pragmatic question where we can share on how you are actually leveraging artificial intelligence, because we hear a lot online, we hear it from different companies. So it'd be great if we go around this group and understand how are you using AI? How do you, and what kind of value are you generating with AI? Can you please share around with us?
Anyone? I can go first.
Please.
Yeah, so for us, Carsome Certified, right? The vertical that I'm in charge of is actually just born of last year in August. So what we do is basically we sell cars based on the analytics that we have gathered, and how can we price the car at a certain value that will create the best value for consumers. So that will require a lot of data generation. How do we identify the market segment, the market trend, and all this kind going forward. So this is what we have been doing for the past few months. So to say that we fully leverage on AI, we have not really full on with it yet, because right now we're at the stage of building up the algorithm, building up the machine learning to identify, right, cars from different trends, different years, different mileage. What can we do with it? You know, at what price do we buy those cars? At what price do we sell those cars? So this is what is happening right now in my ecosystem that we have developed. So I mean, going forward, I'm sure we will build a more advanced AI solution or machine learning solution that help us to auto-generate all this kind of data and information for us in order for us to make better decisions going forward. Because right now, used car market is a very segmented market, to a point that, you know, the variables is just too wide, right, for us just to predetermine, you know, using manual purposes. That's why that's what we are doing right now, and this is how we're leveraging on the data part in order to build a very strong AI component in order to service our customers.
That sounds great, Alan. Looks like your entire business is eventually going to be data-driven, from lead identification, segmentation, and pricing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sounds fantastic. But you know, this is a great industry you're in. But when we go to the similar or a different industry for human, for example, from the medical field, maybe we can hear it from Dr. Kuljit. You know, how you see, you know, artificial intelligence impacting the human race, you know, in the medical field.
Thank you. No, artificial intelligence is not widely used yet in Malaysia in hospitals, but we do buy applications which are artificial intelligence based. So in medical field, like as you've seen, even in the COVID pandemic, artificial intelligence actually helps us a lot with the data that we receive to identify where patients are and where are exactly the patients who have got COVID and their movement and which area they actually belong, so that we can actually capture this kind of data to know and so that we can contain the disease. So that is using in an epidemiological manner, whereby patients can log on to say what symptoms they have, and then they've been tested positive, how many days they've been tested positive. So artificial intelligence then helps us in that manner. But looking at the diagnostic side, you know that there are areas whereby a lot of diagnostic values are done by humans. For example, a radiologist has to look at hundreds of CT scans, hundreds of X-rays in a daily basis. A pathologist has to look at slides, to look at samples and to decide what kind of pathology the patient will have. Now, artificial intelligence are beginning to get into these areas where there could be a remarkable amount of labor intense amongst the doctors, where they will have to screen through a lot of these diagnostic tools, where artificial intelligence will actually guide and has been guiding doctors in looking at the scans, MRIs, and giving them a kind of a perspective that this is some area of the scan that you need to look at based on the symptoms that you have put into the system. So we find that we don't use it widely, but definitely it is of good use, that many a times you can miss out very critical parts of your diagnosis when you do not have a system like an artificial intelligence. We are not saying that we're going to be reliant on it. You still need human judgment in medical science. Medical science cannot be purely technological based, but you still need some amount of human intervention before you make a decision on it. Just like the aircrafts can fly autopilot from point A to point B, but you still have pilots sitting down on the seat and watching the system, and at any time they can intervene. So in the same manner. So that's how medical science we have right now. It is useful, but we don't have custom-made AI for our own country. We are actually using data that's probably produced from other parts of the world.
Fantastic. So this is more to augment the human intelligence with patterns and filtering, and the human expert can take a decision based on their experience and knowledge. Now, moving on to the academic world, you know, all these knowledge are being cultivated or grown for the future. It would be great to hear your views, Hazlina, if you can kindly share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Balaji, for the questions. So I'm a research fellow at the Center for AI and Robotics, UTM. So Kyra has been around for about 22 years. You know, in the early days, nobody talked about AI, not even among the academic community. But now people have more confidence in AI. They start talking about it, industry, societies, everybody. Our researchers, we have the opportunities to work with a lot of industries, especially these last few years, developing AI systems. People come to Cairo to explore how AI can solve their problems, improve their process efficiencies, even come up with new products. So our researchers have explored many areas of applications, from manufacturing, for example. Some of our researchers work on defect inspections, asset management and analytics, to agriculture, vision-based plant disease detection, authentication of halal chicken slaughtering, wood species recognition, and many others. But our key role as an academic organization centers around three main areas. The first one is definitely talent development. We produce AI experts. We help upskilling and reskilling of workforce in Malaysia. In the industries. For your information, Cairo is MITI's competence center in AI and robotics. We have a state-of-the-art industrial IoT lab that we use for our training programs. We have trained engineers and executives from companies like UNW, Syarikat I Johor, Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia, and so on. And another thing that we do is we do research and development, particularly in developing next generation AI algorithms in some niche application areas. And finally, I think what we do is we do consultancy works for AI solution to industries. For example, we develop an automated traffic data collection and prediction systems for facility management company and JKR to solve traffic congestion problems at the Malaysia-Singapore border in Johor. So these are some of the things that we do at Cairo UTM.
Sounds a lot of work and different problems being solved. The academia is guiding it. Maybe now let's move on from a car industry of Alan to an expressway where Theng, where you come from. If you can share how artificial intelligence is, shaping up that sector, that will be great to hear from you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I generally agree with all the panels here today. AI today is rely on the data, and actually artificial intelligence is not something new in even in Malaysia, because I studied AI 20 years back, and that time probably, when we going through a lot of evolution. Last time, 20 years back, maybe there is not much of data. People still using paper, jot down everything. So today, when we have more and more data, so that is why this AI suddenly is like, when we have a breakthrough with this machine learning model, for example. So that's why it's become a very easy to get technology today, right? So in Plus, actually, probably I should start with, when Plus embarking this digital transformation like 4 years back, that's why to me, AI is an innovation. So we must start somewhere, when you want to go through to bring the whole organization towards this digitalized transformation, right? So we must start somewhere today, right? And, in Plus, we have a lot of customer data. We have a lot of transaction data. We even have along our highway. I believe everyone here is our customer here. We have lots of sensors, but those sensors is sitting there like 10, 20 years. So no one extracting out to reach to the customer. So it's something very excited here. A lot of use cases we can apply, a lot of values we can extract out from the data to get reach to our end user, the customer here, which is our highway driver, for example, right? So these are, a lot of data points, for example, from our CCTV surveillance camera, from our sensor, we can even know like bumper to bumper, how is the traffic condition. All these are very, very good data to be, make it in a machine learning modeling, so we can do something more predictive, right? So we can manage and prescribe our traffic management, for example, right?
Sounds great. This is really for diverse views, on using artificial intelligence. Now, if we go to the next step, let's say we are as a company. I know a company is envisioning to, leverage artificial intelligence. What it means to them terms of infrastructure? Because is it just about buying some piece of software, or you need to do something in your IT setup? There can be several preparation needed to ensure you can run these artificial intelligence solutions. So from this group, how do you see a preparation from a company's perspective for deploying these artificial intelligence to successfully run these use cases, what you just shared? It can be technical or it can be value driven. What kind of preparation are you looking at here? Maybe we start with Hazlina.
Thank you, Balaji. So, well, we know that the economic potential of AI is huge, and we look at reports from various think tanks that saying great things that AI can do for our economy. In a study conducted by IDC, just commissioned by Microsoft in 2018, they found out that only 26% of organizations have started their AI journey. And according to these companies that they surveyed, the key challenges faced by this company is one, talent. Number two is awareness and confidence. So as I mentioned earlier, we are very much involved in AI talent development, which is, it's not really infrastructure, but a very important ingredients to make AI work in Malaysia. So I would like to highlight three main ways that we prepare AI talents. One is that we train masters and PhD students, and they go out and work in various industries inside Malaysia and outside Malaysia. Companies like Petronas R&D, Aerodyne, SkyMine came to us to headhunt for AI talents, and we feel very proud of it. And the researchers that we train are only able to use commercial AI software as a service platforms, but some of them can actually develop from scratch AI systems, particularly important for customized and highly confidential systems. And number two, we work closely with industry to develop our AI content in our curriculum. The pervasive nature of AI means that it should be introduced in all academic programs, not only in computer science schools. To make sure that what we teach at university is industry relevant, we invite industries to co-develop our curriculum. So that's what we do. And we expose our students to platforms or frameworks commonly used in industries. And number three is to produce AI talent at scale, we cannot work alone. And this is where we encourage communities, AI communities in Malaysia to mobilize our resources. We established the Malaysia AI Consortium as a platform of collaboration and network or knowledge sharing. And AI AI talent development is one of our main activities. And yes, of course, there's government rules and all that. Yeah.
That sounds great, because this clearly kind of shows that it's not about a technology preparation or an infrastructural preparation. It includes skill set, scaling up your people. It's about your technology and the maturity of the organizations. And main, very important point you brought up was about collaborating with industries to know the real life, So maybe we turn towards Alan. Alan, what do you see as, the preparation needed in terms of deploying artificial intelligence in your domain?
Well, for us, it's always been, there's a few criteria that we look into, right, in terms of preparing for AI infrastructure. One, of course, it must be in a buy-in from the senior management, so that they understand the value of AI and big data coming in and so on and so forth. Next part is then, of course, once we have the senior management agreeable to it, is then to convince that everyone that's working in the company that the kind of benefit the AI will bring to you, so that they will leverage on it. They will basically use the data that we found or the technology that we've built and so on and so forth, right? If not, then it would be like what Theng mentioned just now, that you have so many sensors on the road, but when no one uses it, then what's the point? The next part that we look into is basically then is the technology that's available right now. Whether it's built in-house or whether that we buy from another country, what is available to us to be used for our business. And after that, we'll look into the infrastructure, right? Do we need to rebuild the entire infrastructure? Whether our system is robust enough to take this kind of technology? Would it be able to support, and so on and so forth? And then the final one will be based on what Hazlina mentioned. Do we have the talent for it, right? It's no point having amazing hardware, amazing software, amazing algorithm, but then we don't have enough talent to basically help us to engineer, to reap the whole benefit from this AI movement. So these are the few criteria that we look into every time we are moving into a new product, or whether it's a new algorithm, right? It's whether we get buy-ins from the people, then whether we have the infrastructure and the technology available to do what we want to do. And then finally is the talent. So these are the preparation that we look into every time we want to move into any AI projects or machine learning projects.
Sounds great. I could see a lot of synergies in what both Hazlina and Alan you shared. Maybe move on to Theng Hui. Would you like to add more on, or how do you synergize with the fellow members?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally agree with Alan. As a technology implementer here, we know that when you want to use a technology, of course, you have to spend money, right? So there's always one question from my CFO. So the ROI, right? So what kind of ROI we can get for the company, right? So when you implement, you bring in AI, whatever, the frontier technologies, right? Probably we have to look at a few things. Productivity, is it improve our productivity, or the cost saving? Probably the cost saving is not from the technology camp itself. It might be from other places like business function, like operation maybe, or customer experience. So these are the things we have to judge a balance point there, And talking about the skill set of kind of thing, yes, this is a new technology. So probably it's a big challenge to maybe to a legacy company. Then from my opinion is I think the working landscape today has a little bit changed. So we also like working with a lot of startups, and we bring in a lot of new kind of the new way of workings. And then this is how we leverage on the maturity of the technology in-house, and also we collaborate with other parties. Okay, so from here parallelly also we can upskill our people, and no matter they are from a technical people or a business people, yeah, we both want to upskill their awareness and the inspiration about the AI and how this AI use case has been implemented now in worldwide. Yeah.
Sounds great. I think this is a lot of inputs given. Maybe now we move to the next topic for this group. Probably we can start with Dr. Kuljit in this case, because always when we talk about artificial intelligence, we speak about data, right? That's like the input to all these intelligent pieces of artifacts constructed by data scientists or companies. But then how can data be influenced by AI? What is the AI benefits of data? How do you see it practically from a medical industry? Dr. Kuljit, if you can kindly share.
Okay, those people who are experts in AI, I'm not an AI expert, but I know that if you want to have a strong, robust AI, your data must be strong. You need to have adequate data in order for the artificial intelligence to be strong enough to give you the correct kind of outcomes that you're looking at. Now, in Malaysia, we have not achieved electronic medical records widely as how we should have been. There are certain private hospitals are using electronic medical records, and then you have a few government hospitals that electronic medical records. Now, if you have electronic medical records, it makes it very easy, because all the data that you require would be in soft copies, and that's very easy to extract data like CT scans, your slides, and your data on the clinical findings of patient. Now, if everything is a hard copy, then it takes one more step that you need to scan them, you need to download them, you need to digitalize them, and the data will be very raw and not in an organized manner. So in order for us to come out with our own AI on healthcare, it's going to take some time. In countries like Singapore, they have gone National Electronic Medical Record System, which is probably the easiest way to move forward when you're talking about AI. So we can do in an isolated format in Malaysia, but it's going to take time. So we are using AI, as I mentioned earlier just now, custom-made AI modules from overseas. That will be probably suitable for cohorts or patients based in their environment. It may not be suited with the clinical data of our kind of patients. Our hypertensions, our diabetics, our genetic formation are totally not the same when you compare to a European country. So for us to reach that level of medical care will take time. And then again, there are other issues in medical healthcare. When you start taking scans and downloading it, there is an ethical issue. There would be privacy issue. Those are the kind of things that come into play when you come to the level of getting healthcare information from your patients. So we have to be mindful of that. It's different in other industry because it really doesn't matter, because there's not much of privacy. If you want to know my data of my car, it doesn't matter. I'm happy. You take the data of my car, you give me a good price, I'm happy. I will tell you everything that you need to know about my car, but I won't tell you that I hit my car a few times and got it repaired somewhere. I may not want to tell you that. But you know, you can share that knowledge without any issue. But healthcare becomes a little bit difficult.
Absolutely. I think you got two very important perspectives in this AI journey. One is not all the data is digitalized already in this world. We know there's several untapped data still existing, which is one fundamental activity. And naturally, the privacy rules, as we see across the world, at different regions, we are seeing different laws coming up for data privacy. It's not just we will have free access to all data we wish to have. So I fully agreed, Dr. Kuljit. Maybe we move to Alan. I know when it comes to this, AI capabilities and you're dependent on data, right? How do you apply AI to ensure the data is good? Because using data, you do AI, but can you apply AI on data, for example, like quality, profiling and all those things? Can you share something on that one, Alan?
It's actually rather simple because we need data to create AI, right? And then we use AI to clean up the data. So they are both, they go hand in hand. They're like an infinite loop. So the more data we have, the more we can refine the AI, and the better the AI, the better the data that we're going to gather. So this is the part that what we're doing, right? So in order to apply to the car industry, it's basically the same thing. Now we know everyone is buying Proton, right? But then we don't know what kind of Proton, what color is it, how many years, and so on and so forth. The AI will then help us to refine those data. What data do we want to make better decisions, right? So that's the short of it. It's actually that simple. We need data to build what we want, and then we'll just use the AI part to refine it. So that's how we use the application and how AI will help us to get better, cleaner data so that we can make better decisions.
That sounds interesting. It's like a closed loop, right? Both feeding to each other. And Theng Hui, how do you see this? How AI can benefit the data, if you can share with us.
Yeah. So when we start harness on AI, right, then we sure, what is one of the very important criteria is we must have a quality data. So people will start, looking at some good data and how we clean the data, and all this thinking process will be kick-started automatically, right? So when we getting more and more data, so actually more and more responsibility, because you're holding a lot of data now, especially those are sensitive data. So from time to time, then we will start thinking, should we get something in like a governance framework, for example, or any tools that can help us to manage the data now? So yeah, it's kind of a two ways interactive here between the data and the AI here.
I think that's very, very important point, because especially with the data getting more and more diverse, we may not be controlling all the data which we are consuming. For example, some data can be originating in the company systems where you govern it, but you may get a lot of data from the external sources. So if you have an AI system like a data quality or a data profiler, that can kind of scan through the new set of information, which you may not have much details about, but it can kind of reasonably give you a pattern to understand the data. So you're not really consuming a data without knowing some features or attributes about it. Absolutely, I agree with you. Thank you. Maybe now we move to a very physical question. We spoke about how you use AI, what are the factors and what are the benefits. Now, the next question comes is around a location related, which is like what we in IT call as data centers, right? We know everybody is going into cloud. There are still companies operating with data centers based on sensitivity of the data. There's always some data centers going to be out there. So in these kind of data centers, especially with, with pandemic and all these restrictions, two major problems are surfacing. One is the users are using their IT systems longer because they are connected remotely. They're not just working from offices. And also there is a possible restriction on your staff to enter the data centers, right? Because of some medical reasons, or some staffs, they may not be able to go to these data centers. So how do you see an artificial intelligence system? This is more like a use case. How you see a self-managing data center based on AI? Are you people using it, or what are your views on it? Maybe Theng, if you can start on it, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So I still remember when we looking into all these machine learning models like a few years back, we also consider, on-premise or the public cloud service provider, the combination. So eventually, I would say most of the business today, probably when they're transforming their business, right? And probably the good ratio now is 70-30. 30 is still on-premise because of some regulatory, constraint that you must keep your data still within your premise, for example, right? So I still remember when we are considering, should we buy a GPU box? Something like from the Cairo lab, right? Dr. Hazlina, it's a very powerful box. We can do a lot of, from our CCTV, we have a lot of images. So when we want to process all these photos, images, so we need a powerful processor here. So we also when we study further, right, we compare the cost by cost. And if you want to maintaining a one box here, which is a very expensive box with all this power management and this, sometimes for the cybersecurity concern, we have to patch it as well, the OS. So a lot of consideration there and a lot of manpower involved. So eventually, when we're starting something small, right, we would prefer to go for a public cloud service. And the outside nowadays, a lot of ready-made API or something we call machine learning as a service or platform as a service, you can leverage on it. So you can quickly do a test, a POC or whatever that can prove your ideas is working. This is something is very good, yeah.
Sounds great. Maybe let's move on to Dr. Kuljit, because you have a very special kind of data, which is healthcare data. That may not be so easy to put it in a cloud by everybody, right? So how do you see, Dr. Kuljit, this kind of highly confidential or sensitive data being in data centers? So any thoughts you would like to share around that? How can we maintain them using AI?
Yeah, most of the healthcare data is very difficult to take the risk of putting up into a cloud, because the issue of getting it crashed, getting it kind of corrupted, plus also someone getting access to it. So in the healthcare, we're very skeptical, and most of this data, if I run a hospital with a fully EMR system or total hospital information system, everything is kept in-house. And and with other servers as backup, but also in-house. The reason we are doing this is because of that fear that we have not overcome it. But when there are specific projects on a particular healthcare data analysis that we need to share across the board. For example, if you're going to start a cancer registry, we can blanket or blanco the patient's data, patient's name, and make it non-identifiable data, and we can share that across different countries. Now, if you have heard about Watson, IBM Watson, they have got a fantastic international database on cancer. So if I put patient symptoms, patient demographic, which is unique to me, but that Watson IBM will actually pick up and say that this is probably your probable diagnosis, and this would be the probable type of chemotherapy and radiotherapy you need to give. But they're using data which is actually doesn't specifically say which patient. So that is on a specific project, just on cancer, for example. That too on a specific cancer. But you see, now we are narrowing it down to a very smaller and smaller group, and of course the data becomes then very limited.
fully agree, Dr. Kuljit. And also, when we especially talk about data centers, with cloud, the data center versus cloud topic is an ever ongoing topic. At the same time, whether it is cloud or the on-premise hosted by your own companies, AI comes into the play in several aspects. For example, monitoring the equipment, monitoring the performance of your servers, your switches, your networks, and also anomaly detection. If somebody tries to, access your data, and if this is not a standard pattern, you can fire an alert and you can kind of improve your security and make it more robust. So there are a number of opportunities. We all know that, the data centers, it can be a very small data center, right? You may host 90% of your data in your cloud for scalability, elasticity, big data computing, and all these cluster-based working. But you will always have some research information, private or confidential information, where AI can kind of give you a lot of confidence. You experience it on premise, and then you go large scale in the cloud, right? So that is another pattern which we can look into. Just looking at the clock, I would like to take one more question with this allied group, and before we get into our closing remarks, because every time we speak about artificial intelligence and these kind of algorithms, there are two possibilities, right? One is you can hire a data scientist and a data engineering team and completely build it in-house, or you can just take it or consume it as a service. We have a lot of services available from certain big vendors or some niche companies, especially in areas of images, in terms of translation, for example, and all these areas. So how do you see, this algorithms or AI developed in-house versus the AI capabilities which you subscribe or you just get as a service? That would be great to hear the view of this panel of AI as a service versus AI being developed. Probably we can start with you, Hazlina.
Right, thank you. So yes, I mean, I can think of several reasons how, whether you should choose AI as platforms provided by companies like, AWS or, all the cognitive services that they have versus home development. One is that we know that in terms of the generic data that they use to train and develop these models, if we talk about autonomous vehicles applications, images of traffic lights, pedestrians, other vehicles are quite standards, in which case using AI SaaS is okay. However, for example, we have one of our researchers, Professor Rubia. She's developing a system called Kenal Kayu, which is a wood species recognition system in collaboration with Forest Research Institute Malaysia or FRIM. So these data are very unique and requires a human expert to verify species of each sample. So data like this may not be available or may not have been trained by AI SaaS. And even if they have generic data, it may not produce accurate models. Okay, and another reason is that AI systems for companies who want to be competitive, want to have a competitive advantage over their competitors, usually requires a high level of customization. We have experience with one of the systems that we developed for a semiconductor fabrication company. Another reason is that some companies have already invested in AI infrastructures and they just want to use them. So, they would go for in-house development. And again, just like Dr. Kuljit mentioned just now, it's about data privacy, security, and governance. Unless you are very clear about the policies, then you should do a house development.
Maybe then we move to Alan. How do you see this coexistence or balancing between AI as a service versus homegrown AI?
Well, it's basically similar to what Hazlina has mentioned, right? If yours is a pretty generic model, which then AI as a service is not an issue. But then if you follow to what Dr. Kuljit mentioned, right, it's where you need a lot of body of certification, you need a lot to verify, then then you have to make sure that you're getting it from the right source. So building in-house, I'm not sure might be a good idea or not. But for us, right, we're building a whole new system, basically to challenge the used car industry, which means that for us to build it in-house is pretty okay. And then we don't have to have, we're not so sensitive of our data, because if you imagine if we get the wrong color of cars, no one's going to suffer for it, right? We'll just get maybe a bad review from all our cars is being sold. So that's the balance that we have to make in terms of whether, in terms of the privacy of the data, the integrity of the data, and so on and so forth. And if a wrong conclusion is being made, what is the consequences and what is the impact? So these are the things that we evaluate. So for us, we definitely will build it in-house, right? Because we have the resources, we have the talent, and our data set is already readily available for us to do all this homemade sort of AI system. So that it will be my take on whether homemade versus off-the-shelf AI system.
So let's then move on to Dr. Kuljit. Your views on homemade versus AI as a service, especially considering the privacy of the data in your domain. How would you look at it?
Yeah, as a doctor, because I am still a practicing doctor, and I can say that, of course, I would want to have homemade data for my patients, because my set of patients are going to be very much different than what you have in the United States or in the Europe, as I just mentioned to you just now. Our set of diseases, yes, all human beings are the same. An American and a British and a Malaysian, we have two eyes, one nose, one mouth. We are still the same. We are not different. Only the color may change, but everything else is the same. But we still have different genetic makeup, different environment, different cost factors of our diseases. So to be really accurate, to use AI, best is to use homegrown. Then we get the best accuracy in terms of diagnosis and also our treatment module. If you're going to use the generic ones that you get, then again, there should be a lot of clinical judgment of our local doctors to decide whether what has been advised by AI, will that be accurate enough for our kind of patients. So definitely local grown will be the best, but we do have our constraints, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time. We always complain about constraints. It's just that we have to take positive steps and move forward and try to overcome the constraints, and then we definitely will do well.
That's great. Let's move on to Theng. What's your view on it? Coming from an expressway, how do you see this? Do you see your domain can take generic one, or you see some specialities driving it the other way?
Right. Thank you, Balaji. As we know today, what is the most used use cases of AI today is, let's say, video analytics, right? Natural language processing, and some predictive modeling on using the data, right? So among these domains, and in my view, sometimes the business have to move fast. Okay, we are looking for some quick wins or some fast solution. So, sure. But in AI, when we start working on AI, you have to explore, you have to experiment, and a lot of try and error sometimes. So my view is we can go for the AI as a service. So this is something you can plug from a standard model or standard algorithm that you can use directly. But when you go deeper, right, even before you roll out your product or services, you will find out some things you might need to customize. So I give you one example. It's a real life use case that we're facing is we have a chatbot. So we easily leverage on a lot of outside, a lot of cloud service provider. They can give you a good NLP solution. But Malaysian, we speak Rojak sometimes. If you speak totally fully English or fully Bahasa, there's no problem for you, right? So that is the part we have to use our in-house skill people to do the customization. So to improve whatever that your problem statement of your business, in this case.
Perfect. Sounds good. I think we're almost on the clock. We need to wrap up the discussion. Maybe I'll give you a 15-second to each of you to just take one last question. What is the key message you would like to share to your peers who are embarking AI journey? The one top message, what you would like to give before we close it out. Let's start with the lady, Hazlina, please.
Right, thank you. In Malaysia, for me, we would like AI to bring economic prosperity and improve physical and social well-being of the people. The fact that, and also the fact that ASEAN is home to more than 20% of the world's population the region stands to get the most from AI deployment. And we see that some ASEAN countries, including Malaysia, started preparing to reap the benefits of AI, particularly for sectors that are economically important to them, through various policies. So then I would like to highlight the open science nature of AI actually allow us to compete with other technologically advanced countries because it depends on how quickly we can assemble a large database and develop a domain-specific knowledge and applications around that database, so we can compete faster, in a shorter period of time. There are a lot of groundwork to do, ethic frameworks, regulations, and policies, data sharing policies, IP policies, and so on. But I am very optimistic that Malaysia is up for it.
Great, Dr. Kuljit, your message, the key takeaway for your fellow peers on AI.
Well, AI is here right now, and AI is going to be for the future. So there is no running away from this technology and this phenomena. So we all have to get used to it. We have to learn AI. Everybody needs to learn what AI is, understand it. And I think in whichever discipline you look into, AI would be the way to go. So we all have to sit together and learn AI and get it done, because you can't run away from it.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Right, thanks. So yeah, my favorite quotes, last time we always learn all these programming languages, right, to communicate with the machine. So today we want the machine to learn from a human, think like a human, right? So I believe every industry, every company, no matter where you are, you must have a very unique AI solution, your very unique problem statement for your business. So do not be afraid. Start small and start somewhere today. Yeah, that's my message.
Alan?
Well, for me, I'll come from the business point of view, right? Right now, Carsome is the market leader in the used car industry in the Southeast Asia region, right? We have presence in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore, which means that to maintain this kind of growth, we must provide even better accuracy to our consumers, better seamless journey for our consumers as well. So which means that, especially now, this is a very, very good time to look into our AI development, because it will help us to continue growing further. And I'm not just saying for my business, I'm just saying for everyone's business in the region right now. We must engage AI to provide better services and better value to our consumers, because if we are not doing it, trust me, someone else behind the garage now is planning something even bigger than whatever we are planning right now. So that's why, take the opportunity, scale it up. We have the resources, we have the talent. And, as Hazlina mentioned, we have the market size for it as well. So this is what I will do. This is my message to everyone listening to this talk.
I think that concludes this great session. So I would wrap it up by saying, start small, be ethical, make AI a practice as part of your business, and keep succeeding. Over to you, Bhavna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Balaji.